Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Rod, Twadswazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, John Travolta, JMels24, Unimento, M, Iron26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Bogey, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Marie and Elands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Isn't that audacious? That's audacious, but carry on.
It is, yeah. So, and then we come to the terms. So the term Aboriginal is actually an erroneous term, and I don't like to use it,
Yeah.
and nor
Indigenous.
do anyone.
That's why I said indigenous.
Well, indigenous is also an erroneous term. So so indigenous refers to flora, right? So the here in Australia,
just flora. Just flora.
So indigenous refers to flora. So using the term indigenous is disrespectful. So using the term original people or or in Australia we use the term Koori, which means original nations.
Original. Okay.
But so
because the ab, you're right. There's a prefix ab. The prefix ab
so
before original is a mess up.
The ab prefix. Yeah, the ab prefix means not original.
Exactly.
Original.
But I was using general terms that people mostly use, which is like they say black. I'm not black. Nobody's black.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I agree. I love the way you're talking because I fell into the same paradigm as being a misnomer conveyor of fraudulent language by using that term, underestimating the knowledge that you had. So I use the term that everybody can relate to. But you're right. I thank you for that. Continue. I like that.
So even, and that's what I'm saying. So all throughout our colonial history and then our formed history with our federation, they would sign documents with our original people, and they would use terms like Aboriginal, and they would sign it, not knowing they would be tricked into signing it and tricked into signing to say that they weren't original.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway,
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Nice little bit of history.
Brother, it's here over in the United States. They had forced census where we were known by our own tribal pedigree that what we were. But the colonizers, including Mr. Walter Plecker, who I would go and shit and piss on his grave right now, who's from Virginia State, who made legislations, whereas you better put on there Negro, black, colored, mulatto, and all these other terms, which are what they do. And now Jesse Jackson, who's supposed to be the poster boy of, African American is the most latest. But see, I don't ascribe or subscribe to that. And I know a lot of us that don't do that. But it's like you said, a lot of people in the civil rights movement and a lot of people before that were forced to use that because here, right in Virginia and North Carolina, if you were to write anything other than Negro, colored, mulatto, or whatever other those pejorative things that make you out of a human being, black, Negro, same thing in Spanish, negros, Latin, same thing, black, which is only applied to inanimate objects, versus the denotative and the most etymological definition, which is American, which is defined as the copper-colored tribes, races found here. by the Europeans, later applied to the European descendants. So they signed on and acquiesced, tacit acquiesced to that misnomer term. And that's where we are right now. So when we talk to people outside of our,
Yeah,
when we
we
talk
can
to
hear
people
you.
outside of,
Yeah,
when we
we
talk
hear
to
you,
people
Neil.
outside of our continent, and I say continent because it goes for Antigua all the way down to Venezuela, including the United States and even Canada, that whole term is being spread around this whole continental area of the Americas, and we're going through that right now because of what our ancestors did, being tricked and being forced to do these documented um 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 you know um basically just giving up the inheritance, giving up the it's called birth theft, just not only land stealing. So I understand exactly what you're coming from. That's why I tell people, bro, if you don't really know the details from what's going on, then you're only learning what the news is telling you and what you've been indoctrinated by the
Correct.
same thing with the heliocentric thing. But I love what you're saying, though. And
Can I
I love
also
your honesty. Yeah.
Could I also
Yeah,
touch
mic
on
check.
another topic that you,
Yes, we
Daniel?
can hear you,
Good.
Could I
Neil.
also
We hear you,
touch
man.
on Could I also touch on another topic that you said in regards to living off the land? You know, like as a European coming to a land and becoming wealthy from it and living off it. So I'll just give you another perspective. So my parents come from Ireland
Mm-hmm.
to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
They come out in 1969. Now, um, my mum and dad didn't want to come out, but my dad was an active member in Sinn Féin,
Mm-hmm.
and when his work found out he was an active member in Sinn Féin, he got the sack. When he
Mm-hmm.
went home, he was there. My mum with the 7 kids, my 7 older siblings, were out the front door with all the furniture. So
Excommunicated.
yeah, so
Oh,
the
God.
only thing he could
I'm gonna have
do.
to. Sorry, a second.
Okay,
Deal.
it's all right.
It's
Man.
just you've got to understand that it's not like you were in person having this conversation. So when you sort of interject, it just garbles up the audio. So it's just something that you're just gonna have to get disciplined in pretty quick, because unfortunately, if you do just decide to have that kind of flowing conversation like you're over the table from one another and your ears and mouth do work simultaneously, my gates don't work that way. So it just cocks things up. So if someone else is talking, you just have to accept that you've got to be on mute rather than just waiting to interject and yeah, those ruin the audio. And yahas while someone else is talking just means you can't hear them anymore. Anyway, that's what the pre-show's for. Hello, everybody in G+. Yes, we can hear you, Neil. Thank you. Don't ask
Thank
again.
you. Hey, Tent, what's up? We missed you yesterday.
Jardot was in the middle of something.
Just saying hello to Tent. My goodness.
Sure, but while I've
Yeah.
just told someone off, I've told them off because there's a flow of information coming from Jardot that I want to hear. that's why I've told someone off. That's how important it is to me. So yes, pleasantries aside. Hello, everyone in G+. Hello back. Hi, Nathan. Hi, Neil.
Oh.
Go ahead, Jardot.
Hello, thanks, Nathan. Yeah, so in relation to what you were saying about living off the wealthiness of other people's land. So we come out here in '69. We didn't want to. My parents didn't want to come out here. They were forced out here. So as far as we're concerned, we come out here from 800 years of oppression, right? So we were forced out here because of the oppression that had happened to our people. So I consider myself an original to Northern Ireland, but we ended up here by pure fate. So it's not as if people that are living in other people's land are there extracting wealth and not accepting the particular people's culture and accepting the fact that these people were original owners of the land, if you understand what I'm saying.
I definitely understand what you're saying, and I apologize for generalizing
Can I ask
the
something?
refugees, or the migrants that were excommunicated, or like the undesirables of Europe that were sent over in the New York harbors which is one of the main things when people see those pictures of a bunch of so-called white people with original people or African people or Americans hung by trees. Those are not the majority of the Europeans that came over here peacefully to settle and coexist, even live together and had children together. That's the generalized, indoctrinated farce that they make to divide us over here. But there were undesirables from Europe that were sent over here in the 1800s, in the early 1900s, who were the ones that, for some reason, had a problem with prosperous dark-skinned people. And that's why you have the Tulsa, Oklahoma, so-called Black Wall Street burnt down in Rosewood. It was like everybody was just living lovely, but being that some people was able to strap their own boots and do it, do it alone, it was like a lot of enviness because when they came over here, they were indentured servants who had to pay indentured contracts off by being transported from Europe or wherever, on that side over here. So it's a lot of chaos, and that's part of what this whole thing of this so-called racism thing is going on. But it's not the majority. A lot of them came over here because they were trying to survive. You know what I'm saying? And the ones that came to survive, their heart was in it. You could tell. But then there were some who were just undesirables that Europe didn't even want to be bothered with. And they basically dumped their trash over here. And then these guys came over here and just ran amok. And
Which
that's
sorry.
I'm talking about the same time you're talking about, like in the 60s. I'm talking about the 19th and 20th century. Well, the history of Australia goes way beyond that. But I understand exactly what you're saying, Jado. I got you 1,000%.
When you say indentured servants, what nationalities were the people? Do you know?
They were all nationalities. They were pale. They were dark skinned. They were European. They were Huguenots. I mean, everybody was. Even the movie 12 Years a Slave, which everybody thinks is that explained it to you. There was two: the guy who was snatched up and the so-called white guy was snatched up. Everybody was. Indentured servitude had nothing to do with skin color, and those people who had the people under contract, they had different skin complexions. In New Orleans, they were dark-skinned people that enslaved dark-skinned people and pale people. That's what I'm saying. When you find out the truth about what happened over here, instead of the indoctrination, you'll understand that skin color has nothing to do with it. However,
You know how many? Hold
hold
on. Let me say something. You know how many Italian people were hung in New Orleans? Go through your
hold on,
history
say
on
it
that.
again, Neil. Hold up, Neil. What you said? I'm sorry. I hear something in the background clicking and clacking. What?
Not from me. How many Italian people were hung in New Orleans?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with that. That's what I'm saying. But the fact of the matter is, at the beginning of this conversation, what we were talking about, Neil, was he was reinforcing my knowing that I was using the wrong word. First of all, aboriginal is not original. It's the opposite. But they make original people who either welcome or either are invaded foreigners who set up colonies and establish settlements, and then they start doing I forgot the term, it's in Latin, but it's where the legislation of the documents come in, and it's like a deceptive treaty or deceptive constitution where a lot of the originals don't know the language because the invaders basically dictate after their predecessors who had forced their place in here. I'm not talking about the ones who, like this brother's family who came over later on in the 18th and 19th and 20th century.
Just interrupt for a second, Heroes.
Okay, you've got to start the show.
Well, no, it's not that. I just want to ask a quick question. So you said invaders. These were the invaders from the perspective of the, let's just call them indigenous people for easy reference. I don't want any arguments.
Right.
But for these indigenous people of these, let's just call them new worlds. What were the invaders exactly? Were they alien invaders?
Well, you could consider them aliens, but not in the way of like green or grays or
What's an alien?
But yeah.
What's an alien?
An alien is somebody that's not from that land and comes in.
So
that's an outside of the land.
Okay, I'm trying to go somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is the indigenous people of a new world experiencing alien invaders.
Right.
And they came from the horizon.
Right.
Right. And from the perspective of the alien invaders, that would be, in this instance, well, let's just call it me. Yeah? Let's say it's me that's the alien invader in this instance. I travel out towards outer space on the hunt for the discovery of new worlds, which
I
will be
love
like...
it. I love it. Good, Nathan. Good, Nathan.
Well, no one can hear me because you're still off mute babbling through me. Thanks. Yeah, so the alien invaders, that would be me in this example. I'm travelling out towards outer space, that's at the horizon. And when I get there, I'll oust the indigenous people of the New World and steal all its resources. Right? The only problem with that equation is that the indigenous people of the New World often, after you've exploited them for slavery, they're just people. They just want normal people stuff. And the country itself may become a third world country initially, and then a developing country, as it's now named, and then a developed country. And then they're just more people to deal with to rob your power. It all sounds like a bit of a problem. It would be much better if nobody discovered any new worlds and there was no more alien invasions. So I think what we should do is change the horizon to Earth curve edge, change outer space to being above us instead of out towards the horizon, and make planets, planes, new worlds, the lights in the sky. So just tell the people that if they want to discover new ground to walk on, they'll have to go up towards the air. That's where they'll find it, because then they'll never find a damn thing, and no one will venture towards the outer space that we found new worlds in formerly. Sorry to tell you off, D.
That was beautiful, Nathan. I'm telling you that is exactly a great, I wouldn't say metaphor, but what really happened throughout time. That was excellent. And like the brother said, like Jado said about the Ireland, we know who oppressed Ireland. Europe was Scotland. They were all oppressed. You know what I'm saying? So, and like I agree with you, George. Everybody was in the invasion from everybody. And guess what? Guess what? The ones that came over here, the Europeans, who they call Christopher Colombo or Saint Christopher, those guys were me and Elijah's complexion and Chaka's complexion. Okay?
Just one more thing.
A lot of them.
Christopher Colombo?
Well, Christopher Columbus, they say Colombo, they say Esteban. There's a whole bunch of names that they throw up that they believe that's being, falsely used. Like it's one of those. His name is like a mystery, like Aristosthenes. You know what I'm saying? Like, was that the name? There's a whole bunch of names that are documented in history books that is inaccurate. Once you start digging down into the rabbit hole, you realize that wasn't the name.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Arwin, Eli, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man, Neil, Brian, Arthur, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Let's go. Let's go.
What's up, guys?
Hello.
Get your rocks up, baby.
Hello.
Good
Good
afternoon.
morning again. Good morning again. Good morning
Good
again.
morning. Good morning.
Good morning. I've just been pondering if there was any scientific evidence from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics.
Negative.
Well,
I'm a
No,
how would
fire.
they understand our DV?
Exactly. How could
The
they
effect.
have any?
Yeah, but they could have a DV, but how could they understand what it is? It's happening in the sky, in a place they can't go to and can never experience. So they couldn't even understand their DV. Never mind. So how could they ever find? Never mind finding a natural cause. How would they understand it? They don't know what the light in the sky is, or anything else. So how can they? If you understand what I mean, how can they even
exactly.
understand that?
What do you mean by DV?
They're dependent variable. The effect that they observe in the sky, that will be their dependent variable, and they will have to come up with an independent variable as part of a scientific hypothesis, which is their presumed cause to this effect. But if they don't understand the effect, never mind getting to the point of not being able to come up with a cause because it's happening in a region they can't experience. The DV itself, how could they understand it?
So
They could
Nathan,
only
when you,
pre-assume. Just 1 second. They could only
sorry.
pre-assume things about the light in the sky, which
You just make it up.
that's all they could do.
Well, we know they can make up just so stories, but they often cite that they have science. The whole body of science supports us being on a sphere. And the other question I'm going to ask today was in regards to the distance to the sun, with that in mind. And I'm glad that Brian's gone where he's gone for that very reason, which is to say, if you're going to claim you've got science and you're going to show us astronomy or cosmology or anything that's come from these pseudoscience fields, we're going to want to see science for it. And Brian's immediate objection is to say that they do have phenomena. They can observe things occurring in the sky, and you can say that's an effect. That's something happening, fair enough. But they can't get close to the effect or in any way manipulate the effect or even, have the effect be in any way tangible to them beyond what they see through their lens. So if they can't even get close to the effect to know what the effect really is, how are you going to suppose the cause of it as an independent variable? That's supposed cause of the effect in a hypothesis. And Brian's right. They can look at stuff twinkle, and then they can tell us that they predicted it was going to twinkle at that time, but that's not really predicting the cause of the effect. It's just watching it in a cyclical motion. So yeah, there isn't science for the stuff that they use to claim that we're on a sphere based on the night sky.
So Nathan, when you're asking for scientific evidence, you're saying, has it gone through experiments, right?
Well, experiments, if it's contextually the scientific method, and if we're asking for any scientific evidence for, say, gravity, then you've got to offer up what you suggest you've got. And like I say, they suggest they've got science.
You can't have that with stuff in the stars, and that's what you're saying, because we can't get there. We can't manipulate anything. We can only observe it. We can't put it through the scientific method.
Right. So when it comes to the scientific method, your first step they can achieve, and Brian would concede that also, right, Brian? They've got a phenomena, which is the first step. Observe natural phenomena. Okay, twinkle lights. Yeah, we're all hearing it from the day we're born. Yeah. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Okay, so we don't know what you are. Beyond the just so stories. So what's the next step in the scientific method? Well, to formulate a hypothesis. Well, a hypothesis is relatively straightforward when broke down. It's just a effect and your presumed cause of it. The presumed cause of it is the independent variable, that which you will vary when you perform an experiment. And the effect is what you're trying to achieve. So that's your dependent variable, as Brian just pointed out. Well, you vary your independent variable to see if it causes your dependent variable. That's an experiment. It's very simple when you break it right down. So that's what we're asking for from any of the fields that we would assert as pseudosciences, because they're under the banner of science and they don't follow the scientific method. That would be observe natural phenomena, suppose a cause of the effect, vary that presumed cause and see if you can induce the effect. They don't do that. They don't have science for the astronomy and just so stories that go along with it to assert that we're on a sphere based on sky vacuums and second law of thermodynamics violations. Any
Well,
But they
evidence?
can't
excuse me.
even.
There's no.
They can't even
Th-
just for something very quick. They can't even claim a prediction because what they're dealing with is a cycle, and it's a documented cycle. So to say that they're predicting something is also false because it's not a prediction if it's a cycle, is it? It's like me predicting the hour hand of a clock that's working correctly. You know what I mean? It's going to be at 5 o'clock at this amount of time. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, because it's a clock, it's a cycle. So it's
It's
not
just
prediction.
because you're nice, Brian. That's what it is.
Well, no, he's right.
So-
Is you describing a cycle versus making a prediction? In scientific context, a prediction's a hypothesis.
So you trying to tell me that there's no such thing as observable science and assumptions, and just saying because you see it happen over and over again that you come up with a theory just based on observation, and you can just say, well, I believe or I assume that the lights are doing this, that, and the other, and they're doing this for this reason, without using the proper methodology of science, the scientific method? That's what you're telling me?
Well, other than you did have some aspects of the scientific method in your question, which is, the observation part. Yeah, you've got to observe stuff happening. That's a phenomena. But yeah, beyond that,
Okay.
that's where they end. They don't formulate a hypothesis, suppose a cause, and then vary it in an experiment. They don't do any of that.
Gotcha.
Well, who cares? Who cares
There's-
about
there-
all of that stuff, right? Because
Well, but-
Mitchie Kaku said what, chocolate?
Nah, you can go ahead, but I'll say good morning. Good morning,
Good
everybody.
morning.
Hey, Chocolate.
Good morning. Good morning. What did Mitchie Kaku say?
What Eli means is I can't remember the quote verbatim, and I know damn well that you can. But
Something
got it.
about the seat of your pants and whatnot.
I got it. I'll post
What
it in
do you
Master
mean,
right now.
What do you mean? In science, we always say that you make observations, you have a theory, make more observations, and it's a very, very tedious process. Wrong. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. Ichio Kaku. End quote.
It should be in Master D now.
thank you.
Science, we
Excellent.
always say that you make observations, you have a theory, you go make more observations, and it's a very, very tedious process. Wrong. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. It's guesswork. It's guesswork.
Very good.
That's annoying when he says so-called, like it's meaningless.
I don't think he means it that way.
Didn't that bother
Either
you,
way,
Shaquille? It bothered me.
the main point is
So-called.
if your field is not using the scientific method, your field is not science. You're not working in science. You're not doing science. That's the simple answer to it.
Nathan,
Yes.
what part of the scientific method does theory come in?
It comes after experimentation. So once you've established...
How did they use... I'm sorry.
That's okay. Once they've established the cause of an effect based on the hypothesis, so that's their independent variable, it did cause the effect that they were studying at step one. In the case of the stars twinkling, it would be you varied something can cause them to do that. Then you can form a theory based off the validated hypothesis-based experiment.
What kind of theory are they talking about if they haven't done that?
Like a Watson
Colloquial.
theory, a Colombo theory. Just one more thing. So we're going to do this then. This is we kind of covered this yesterday, but we were too engrossed in talking about teachers, basically. The ponderance of whether or not somebody who is wise to all of the deceptions that we highlight here, to the point where we can use their own words in concession of those points back at them to demonstrate that they absolutely understand them. At that point, is that person an outright liar? And even people who, I'm not even joking, right? People who came to me after the heat of the moment, me calling him out as a liar, it obviously didn't sit well with a few people. And I've mentioned this before. Several of them have got back in touch with me and gone back on what they said and gone, you know what? After a lot of thought, Actually, liar. can't even make this stuff up. It's gone from
Exactly.
60-40 to about 70-30. I'm not even joking.
Hold on. Let me swing it back the other way. In
God.
Hanlon's razor, where does delusional sit as liar or ignorant? Or
It'd be on the ignorant side of it. It wouldn't be on the liar side. I would assert.
Yeah, but
I don't
let
think
me swing it back.
Delusional.
Just give it up, John. He's a
Well,
liar.
therefore,
Oh, look, there's
wait a
four
minute.
people
Do you-
talking.
do
Isn't
you
that
accept-
wonderful? Who wants to go first?
Do you accept that, John? Do you accept his answer? Yes or no? No.
No, delusional and stupid are not synonymous.
He didn't say stupid. He said ignorant.
Same
Liar.
thing.
Ignorant and stupid aren't synonymous.
Let's just start again, Eli.
Hold
Eli.
on. So ignorance is fleeting. Ignorance is fleeting, as quantum eraser specifically laid out. Do you think delusion is fleeting?
Okay, but
No, because that's the thing. Delusion means that you know something and you're being delusional about it at that point. Ignorance is something different.
No, your delusion isn't something you cognitively do.
I mean, if
That's
we're
not true.
calling Matthew delusional, for sure he knows every bit of all of the primary knowledge to make, to make, better judgments than he's been making with the information we've laid out to him.
Right. But the definition of delusional is where this comes into play, is when, even though you know an objective fact, you still don't accept it.
Well,
Yeah,
if he's
but-
not delusional and a liar, then what is he?
yeah, but let me throw something.
Sorry,
cat
we'll
amongst
let
the
Brian
benches.
go next, but just want to define it just so the audience has kept up, because this has come as a result of several days of trying to define this stuff. So I may as well just define it for the audience's benefit who weren't privy to yesterday's end, at the end of the after show. So Adam did this for us yesterday, but I'm going to do it now. So delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. Okay, Brian.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, what you have to look at is how would someone who's delusional behave if you oppose that delusion? Will they behave like Matthew Weathers behaved, which is cool and calm? I would say no. Someone who is delusional will start becoming aggressive, hard to deal with, abrasive, as opposed to someone like Matthew, who was very affluent.
But
And easy to deal with.
was he delusional though when he
He is like
conceded that?
He is like
I'm
that.
sorry,
Wait,
guys.
Chocolate. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I want to include you because you know Matthew. Yeah, see, Matthew has these triggers. It's just not that of, a more aggressive person. It's more passive aggressive and, well, you don't know, like, more petty and catty, like, right, Chocolate, like that would be the things you'd be looking for in Matthew. The
It's
thing
more,
he'll do
I
is
trust
he'll
the
say, I see what
experts.
you're saying, and he'll absolutely straw man what you said. That's his version of aggression.
Go on, Eli.
But that's fine, because that's with him. That's I trust the experts. That's what he told us here, right? Is he delusional when he concedes that you need a flat plane to measure an elevation angle? Is that delusional? No, that's true.
Yep.
He accepted that.
Yeah, but holding the contrary belief thereafter would be defined as delusional. That's the conclusion we drew after yesterday's show. Hopefully, we won't rehash it now for this live show.
Well, we went a bit further yesterday.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't here yesterday. I'm sorry.
Go on, Adam.
Because QE got involved in the after show, and part of the reason, John's just disappeared, but of not wanting to use the term liar was John's objection. I think we got down to that he felt that you were making a judgment of somebody, and from a Christian point of view, that's not necessarily advisable. Which is why I think he was happier with delusional. We went to scripture. We went to Matthew 7, chapter 15, because we were having the problem that you're not being a judge and jury and giving a verdict in terms of and a judgment in terms of penance, but you should be able to make your own individual judgment, your own recognition of what somebody is or a situation is as you interact with them, without that meaning you've passed some form of true judgment upon them. So I'm going to read it. So Matthew 7:15. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. And now, if I go to Nathan's questions, the fruit that Matthew showed me was the fruit of a liar. Okay, that was the fruit. Now, the causation may be delusion, but the fruit were lies. I'm done.
Okay, can we draw a line under this now? Because we've literally thrashed it out for so many days. And even me, who held a very high level of disdain for teachers, I'm sick of it.
Yes, so long as John says, yes, he's a liar.
Well, is he legally a liar or is he knowingly a liar?
That
No,
might
you
be
can just recognize him as such.
That's an
You don't
interesting.
have to.
Let me just hold on. Let me just stress it. Arwin's question's a very pertinent one, potentially in the future, Arwin. So while you say it with a sarcastic tone, this is something that if you were that person, in this case Matthew learns, then you may well ponder that in the future because it may become a concern. Correct?
I know.
Go ahead, Adam.
I just said it sarcastically because I thought you really wanted to move on to something else.
I do, but Adam's got a conclusory point, I believe, and then we'll go over the Hossenfelder video.
If you wanted to get that judgment in a court of law, then yeah, legally you probably could, based on the evidence we've had. What I'm saying is that's not the point. It's about how you're able to deal with him and categorize people. And the Bible says to me there, by their fruit you will recognize them. So I'm happy to recognize that as a set of lies because that's the fruit he presented.
Right, and I went by instinct. I called him a liar, didn't I? No hesitation. I just called it out as a lie and a liar. Now that's only presumably going on evidentiary standards that, admittedly, I've rescinded or retracted after the fact. But that doesn't change the fact that was how I reacted. I'm not going to stand by my reaction because I thought it was unreasonable.
Yeah, because you're a fruit.
Oh my God! My God!
Pattern recognition, Nathan.
Thought it was unreasonable, but there's been a lot of deliberation about it after the fact. Hence, my torn opinion about it and immediate apology and retraction has sparked quite a lengthy discussion about it from a moralistic point of view, and now Arwin's interjection, potentially a legal point of view, an employment point of view. There's a lot of different point of views. Anyway, go ahead, Adam.
Can I go after Adam?
Yeah,
I had something to say.
Go on then, Neil, as you've interrupted.
Well, what caused you to jump on it like that, Nathan? It was the fruit that he was displaying.
I think that was my point, but yes, thank you for reiterating it, Neil. That's correct.
Well, I would just want to know about the wolf in sheep's clothing part. When did Matthew profess to be something he wasn't?
But that's not the point. A wolf in sheep's clothing is somebody who is pretending in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't have to say he's something. He doesn't have to say, I'm a mechanic, but he's really
hold on.
Do you know what I mean?
Brian, hold on. He's pretending to be truthful and he's a liar by these simplistic black and white standards. So he's pretending to be a trusted educator of children.
He's a wolf.
That makes him a sheep. He's there to he's not there to rip the children apart like a wolf. He's there in that regards as the sheep. It's a trusted position. And what in regards to what he's actually doing, well, he's poisoning them with lies. Wolf.
Not sheep shepherd. He's there as the shepherd.
Whatever.
But he doesn't.
Shepherd.
But the whole point of a wolf in sheep's clothing is the wolf won't claim to be a sheep. He'll just give the impression of being a sheep. You know, that's the point. You're not going to get any honesty.
A wolf in sheep's clothing is going to seed distrust against the dog, and then make the sheep believe that the shepherd's dog is actually there to kill them, and that they should trust the wolf better if he happens to show up. That's what he would do.
Yeah, I don't think the analogy is being used correctly, because a wolf in sheep's clothing, I wouldn't doubt you could call him a wolf, but I don't see the sheep's clothing part.
It's kind of
okay.
a moot
Fine.
point
If we
to
changed
the
it,
analogy, really, that bit, isn't it?
well, let's just change it
That-
slightly. No, it's not quite biblical, but if we changed it to badger in hare's clothing, would that be okay?
if I hadn't have read
Maybe in a turtle
verse
shell, that could work.
if I hadn't have read verse 15, which isn't necessary, it's just by their fruit you will recognize them. Just that's the only bit you need to, yeah? You don't have to judge them, because that was the point of, are we justified in calling him a liar? Well, what
really,
does his fruit
not
show?
really.
Was
well,
he a
no.
wolf? Was he
Hold on. But by that standard, no. He didn't have any fruit.
When he laid his fruit on the table, when you asked him about a triangle, that was his fruit.
He gave me a banana.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
is that really fruit, or is that just method? I mean,
Banana's definitely fruit.
you shall
definitely.
know them by their methods. Is very much. You shall know them by their fruit.
Talking about a grocer's shop, is it?
I was.
But a banana's bent. Bent line, banana.
Okie dokie then.
It's kind of like a guy dressing up as a woman.
That's
What does this have to do with it anymore?
Why'd you have to do that? I find that very offensive. It's a transgender.
Well,
black
no,
dude.
you say a wolf in sheep's clothing. Somebody, you know them by their fruits. And if they're displaying something else other than what their fruit is, they're technically lying.
It's nuts.
Are you talking
not
about
fruit.
testicles?
That's nuts.
That would be more delusional. If we want to go back to the delusion, what I said earlier on is, did Matthew Lawrence react like someone who is, or respond like someone who is delusional? Because I have seen a video, it's going around in recent times, where there's a guy who goes into a gas station to buy something in the US, and he's wearing a dress, but he's obviously a guy. He's big. He's got blonde hair. There's nothing female about him other than he's wearing a dress. And when the guy behind the counter just says, "Thank you, sir," to him or something like that, the guy reacts very aggressively and violently. He wants to beat the guy up and all this kind of stuff. And he's screaming at him with a big, deep voice. Now, I'm not going into that topic, but that is what this guy was displaying, is delusion. And that is how someone who is delusional will react. But that is not how Matthew Weathers reacted. He was cool as a cucumber. And that's someone who's a psychopath.
Not all people react in the violent way. There's some very shy people, passive people who are delusional. So the delusional doesn't automatically mean violent reaction.
Right, I've got to do this now because that's the second time it's come up. All right, sticking him on the narcissism scale doesn't make him a psychopath, right? There's many things that you'd have to tick off in the DSM to actually say he's a psychopath. So it's unreasonable to do so. Number one, you're not qualified to diagnose him at all. Number two, he's not got anywhere near enough of the markers that I researched when I was looking at psychopathy to come close to branding that. What you would be, hold on, there's more to it. Right, what you learn is your average Joe, that's a non-psychopath, someone that has got empathy. That's the bottom line. Someone without empathy is a psychopath, right? Well, when you are with empathy, normal person, then you can sit on the narcissism scale because it's a behavioral trait. Now, you can have or learn certain behavioral traits from narcissists in terms of their attitude, their demeanor, how they behave towards other people and get away with it. You can inherit some of those traits, which means you just sit higher on the narcissism scale. Now, being cool, calm, collected, and being able to look someone in the eye and tell a barefaced lie does not make you a psychopath. Far from it. They might put you, at that time, very high on the narcissism scale, but doesn't mean you're a psychopath. There's a lot more to being a psychopath than just that.
Well, I think Neil's with me in saying that you're delusional, Nathan.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, a psychopath, you really recognize it also by just how they deal with feelings and how their feeling responses are, right? So if they have to contemplate on how to respond emotionally to stay in act, then it's really weird.
I hate this. I hate this so much. Okay, number one.
Let's go to the video.
Nobody here has any right whatsoever to label anybody a psychopath, ever. Let's just get that absolutely clear and out of the way immediately. Right? I'm going to put a stop to this. Right, number two. To reasonably and realistically diagnose somebody as a psychopath, you need fMRI, is it? Functional resonating machine, the one where they basically read your brain waves. And the way they would diagnose a psychopath is they would show them a series of images and measure their empathic response by way of studying the brain imaging that they get back. Now,
Exactly.
They'd only be putting somebody through that horrendously expensive process if they'd already gone through many, many, many quacks, ticking off things in the DSM, which is constantly being revised. Nevertheless, they'd tick them all off, and at a certain point, if they wanted to be absolutely certain, more likely they were pretty much certain that that person was a psychopath, and they were just intrigued for the value of research to stick them in an fMRI. They wouldn't be doing it to say, oh, we're not quite sure, let's just double check with this machine. They'd be studying them based on their empathic responses once they're pretty much damn well certain after years of studying them with diagnostics manuals and ticking off things off sheets. Now, it enrages me when we are but a bunch of tossers when we come to labelling people with this sort of very distinct diagnosis. And it's a bloody outrage, right? Be careful with what you label people. Now, just give you one example, right? One of the guys I really liked, who's not qualified to diagnose people with psychopathy or any other thing, was Thomas Sheridan. But he did an absolute crap ton of research. And along with studying him, I did study various other quacks that had got various high qualifications in this particular field. However, what Thomas Sheridan did better than anybody else was labour what I've just laboured first and foremost. But moreover, I can only give one example of him specifically saying, I will, without being worried about being sued or anything like that, I'll give one example of a psychopath, and that was Thomas Sheridan saying Tony Blair was the only one who'd say, I'm going to label him as my only single example of that is a psychopath, rising up all the way to the top, the cream. But beyond that, I can't think of any examples. He'd describe various traits, and he'd always preface it by saying, just because you recognise a trait in a person doesn't make them a psychopath. It's just so easy. You end up disseminating in everybody going, oh, this person's behaved like a complete shithead to me, therefore psychopath. And it drives me up the bloody wall. Anyway, that's my
I'm
rant
totally
over.
with you there,
Well,
Nathan. I agree. And I don't think that this guy was necessarily a psychopath, but he did have like odd feeling reactions. But that could be something else, right? It could be like some kind of autism.
Well, let me give you an alternative.
trait.
I've tried once. I've tried once. Let's try again. I'll give you and the audience an alternative, which is a way of terminalizing it, whatever, giving it terminology that makes easier sense and won't get you in any trouble, which that might get you sued by somebody. Bloody diagnosing people as psychopaths. It's bloody outrage. Anyway, you can describe what it is that they are describing in terms of that trait, which is a narcissistic trait. So you can describe someone as having a high degree of narcissism in that moment, and that's fine, because everybody can sit somewhere on that scale. The other end of the scale being empathic, by the way. Go on.
Yeah, but you could put somebody through the same test with this machine showing them images and stuff who is on the spectrum, and they might show no emotion towards anything. So you could misdiagnose someone that you don't know is on the spectrum as being a psychopath when they're not. They're just on the spectrum.
What is a diagnosis? Hold on, I might as well break this down. What is a diagnosis? It's arbitrary. It's been devised as a description of a certain load of behavioural traits that's then given a label. And then further to that, you then tick people off in terms of the behavioural traits, and if they have a certain number, you can give them that label. It's all arbitrary.
Right. It's just it's an attempt for pattern recognition, right?
Yes.
And classification.
Yes,
but
classification.
The human mind is very dynamic and really not that categorizable, right? That's really the problem.
But
People are much more dynamic than just some designation in that book.
Hey, check this out. My wife is a psych nurse. Hold up. My wife is a psych nurse time almost 15 years. She worked at Eastern State, which are the killers and the mutilators that come right from the court. And she was the one, her and her colleagues were the ones that had to, before going to the psychiatrist, would be able to decipher and discern whether this person was just trying to use that instead of going to jail, which she did on a few. And one guy, they found out that he was going to try to murder her. And, so thank God that didn't happen to. But the fact of the matter is, then there was one person who chopped his son's head off because he thought his son was possessed by the devil, literally. And he was the most calm, passive, polite, according to my wife and to her colleagues who we still friends with. They said, yes, you would, if you heard the story, you would never believe, not him. So it's a very, very, very thin ice to even talk about, especially when you're not in the profession. At the end of the day, get beyond that. Matthew's a liar.
There's a great word for what I don't know if you said wife, but the person that does that job to figure out if the person's actually bonkers or if they are malingering. That's the term.
Right.
That means pretending to be a nutter, by the way, if you didn't catch on.
Because a lot of people do that. They'll do that because nobody wants to go to jail, especially for what they did, because they would get really hurt and tortured if they went to general population.
Yes, indeed, but we've come so far off the rails. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, this is the biggest red herring I've ever
No, I'm just saying, let's stop calling them psych.
Five people talking.
No, I said that to say, let's stop talking like Nathan said, psychopath and all these psychotic, diagnostic terminologies, and just face the facts. Matthew was caught in a lie.
It's the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual. So are we saying they're looking at patterns? Well, yeah, it's the Statistical Manual in that regard. That's the name on the front cover of the book.
Yeah, and like you said, it's
the man who cut his son's head off.
Oh God,
because he thought he was possessed. Hang on, the man who cut his own.
Can you please stop saying it? I don't want to have to put a bloody warning in the title. Why do you have to latch onto that bit?
Yeah, I was going to say, really?
No, because he wants to. No, he's going to prove a good point.
I haven't finished speaking yet. Give me a second. The man who decapitated his son, that D. Rose is talking about, who was very calm and cool afterwards because he thought his son was possessed by the devil. Is that not delusion? Is he a lawyer or is he delusional?
What does that have to do with it?
Both.
It means that would Matthew Lawrence be displaying those type of traits or the traits of a lawyer?
Hold on. Delusional fits better as a description of what he did. And I'm not going to try to imagine I know what's in his mind.
Well, we still never answered the question, John. Who's lying?
Please,
what is a liar?
Yield to other people. Hold on a second. D, you're going to have to yield to other people. I know you want to talk over them and get in your words, and you keep attempting to do it. But you've just got to get disciplined in it, because otherwise it cuts the lines. Go ahead, D. D. Rose, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just saying it because I didn't mean to do that, but I heard other people speaking, so I wanted to say the man didn't deny doing it. He just said with a straight face and a calm thing that he was saving his son's life because his son was possessed by a demon or the devil. So let's put that into perspective when we try to equate this with Matthew on this, when we do what we're doing, whatever we're doing.
Can we get back to Matthew?
Yes, please. Please, can we stop?
I was trying.
It's just going to put a line underneath this and say, please, can we stop juxtaposing Matthew and whether or not he's a liar with the decapitation of somebody? That'd be great. Thank you.
If I can just address what John just said. He said, I'm happy calling him delusional because I don't want to pretend I can read his mind. Surely that's the same thing. You're assuming now, because you can read his mind, is delusional, or you're assuming yeah, through the evidence that he's a liar. I don't see a difference of how that's your reasoning. You could claim he's delusional in any way more than you can claim he's a liar from what you've said.
I'll tell you why. Because everybody around me thinks just like Matthew. Everybody's denying the truth in their face.
No.
Okay.
No, but you
Can I
just said
hear
the
John?
reason
I didn't hear that.
you
I didn't
can't
hear
call
one
him a
bit of that
liar
sentence. Everyone
is
stop.
because-
Everyone stop. Didn't hear one bit of what John said. Want to try that one more time, John? Hopefully without 5 people talking.
Same thing Matthew did. They accept what is factual, and then they still keep on believing it's a sphere.
That's
I
not
don't know what else to do with it. So hold on.
Well, the point I'm putting to you is nothing to do with other people. You said the reason I can't castigate him as a liar is because I can't read his mind, so he's delusional. It's just as big a castigation from reading his mind.
No, I'm just as happy to
Are y'all
call
gonna
him
make me defend
delusional.
Matthew Learns right now? This is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just as happy to call him delusional as you all are to call him a liar.
Okay, quick shout out to James Mays. He says, "Do we have a video today?" Question mark, question mark, question mark. We do, but we're probably not going to get to it. It's the second day that we probably won't get to it. But maybe don't let Sabine know just yet that we've sent her because we haven't actually done anything with it. But we may get to it. We'll see. Thanks for the
He started this good conversation days ago.
Can I just add that for a liar, if we're going to call him a liar, he made more concessions than I've ever heard a liar make. Okay, because I don't understand again, he didn't lie when he said that he understood you need a flat baseline to measure elevation angles, that you need a flat baseline to derive your longitude and latitude, that it makes no sense to try to measure R without assuming that it's a ball first. I mean, these are concessions that just flew out of his mouth.
No, they didn't.
I don't know.
Hold on. No,
they did.
They did not just fly out of his mouth. I had to drag him around a fair bit when he was saying, no, you don't need a straight baseline. And I'm like, yeah, you conceded that it had to be straight to have a right angle. You mean yes, Matthew? You'd be remiss if you did not say yes. Yeah, I had to drag him around a fair bit to get him to give those concessions. Let's not make it out like he just...
Yeah, but do you remember when he very first came in? Maybe I have to listen to it again, but when he first came in, one of the first concessions he made, besides thanking you and saying, I appreciate you correcting me on the difference between tangential speed and angular velocity, besides that, he actually said that he conceded that it was a flat baseline.
No, he didn't. It was a very cunning trick, what he did there mathematically. Yeah, he conceded he'd done his calculation wrong, right? What he didn't concede was the point that he was making in the video, that rotation wouldn't be felt. He didn't concede that point. He didn't come out and say, actually, bloody hell, yeah, rotating at 1,000 miles an hour would have a significant impact, wouldn't it?
Oh no, I'm not trying to link those two points.
Hold on, Adam's going somewhere. Just let him get to the end. Go ahead, Adam.
No, but that is the point. And then you see, you're saying he's not lying, but he lied twice. The only reason he fessed up was because Nathan had him by the balls. By embarrassment, he got him. Yeah, he didn't come out with before I start, guys. He did one, which was, like I say, veiled, and the rest of it, Nathan battered out of him. Yeah, after he lied.
Did you all pick up?
Oh, go ahead, Ted.
Did you all pick up at the one point where he says, "I'm having trouble picturing what's in your mind," and you can go back to if this serves as a cue part. So to them, a 90-degree at one point on the curved surface, the great circle is a straight line to them. Even though a great circle is not a straight line, to them, because it connects, it's a straight line. So he could admit to 90 degrees, but in his mind, it's at one point, and then the great circle is his Earth. And so that, to him, works. So all he did was define what a true triangle 90 degree is, and then he went into the narrative of the globe, which is the assumption that a great circle also is a straight line, And so even though we saw him do a violation of the law of non-contradiction, he didn't see that against himself.
Quick question back to a super chat. So thank you first and foremost, Jardo, who's on the panel. Hopefully you'll give me clarity after I express my misunderstanding of what you're saying here, but I'll try and read it out as it's typed without the typo. Nathan, surprised that with your drama training you haven't worked out what's going on with this induced discussion. Okay, I don't really know what you mean. Like literally, Jardo, what do you mean? You there, Jardo? I hope so, as you've just left a super chat.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so you've obviously been through theatre training and drama training because you've said it quite a number of times, as have I. And just take your memory back to when you split up in your groups and you were doing method acting, and you had a task to become a particular person and create a particular character. Then after that person did their stint, you all sat around and you discussed how believable that particular person was in their character, what their meaning was, what the undertones were. And also have a think about when you go into a movie and you come out of a movie and you think about certain characters and about what their undertones were, what their real meaning was, what their intentions were. Like, for example, if you go and watch Star Wars and you see Count Dooku, was Count Dooku a psychopath, or did he really have good intentions? You're sitting here and you're wasting all this time talking about these people, and all they are is method actors.
Okay. So you're saying?
Well, see, that's a subset of the psychology of it, right? You're talking, but the way people really act and the way they act in movies can be comparable, and that's why people do it.
But I'm still failing to see the comparison. Are you saying that Matthew Learns has just got a persona or a character that he plays when he's got to do with flat Earth discussions? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's why it's so hard to interpret exactly whether he's a liar or whether he's delusional. Exactly the reason why we're spending so much time trying to decipher exactly who these people are.
Without a doubt, he's wrong. I don't think anybody would argue that. It's just, why is he so wrong is what we're trying to figure out.
Well, that's the point, though. If he's playing a character, then he is being dishonest. You know what I mean? There's no way around that. That is, he's pretending to be something he's not. And he's doing it for the reasons of deception.
D-Rose,
and not for any positive
Hold on
reason.
1 second, Brian. Your mic's open, causing chaos, D-Rose. Thanks.
Video.
I don't know. When I hear somebody say that, it makes no sense to even try to calculate any or measure any type of radius unless you assume it's a ball first. It just sounds like somebody, he knows what he's doing, right? Like, it might sound batshit crazy to us, but he knows what he's doing when he says that. Yeah, it makes no sense. Yeah, you got to assume. Okay, great. He just accepted. He has a belief. Like, I don't care about all the psychology of Matthew. Like, this is crazy, this conversation.
Like, no, because chocolate.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chocolate. Did he state that in the video he made that loads of people watched? Says there's just some belief he has, and he's begging the question
why would he do that? Why would he do that without addressing us first? Right?
Well, why would he do that?
We got him to say that.
Okay, I can only take a straw poll in this regard because we've done this for a solid half an hour. So while I've got the panel on mute and they can't hear me asking the audience, if you're enjoying watching this discussion about Matthew Learns, and it has developed into several days of conversation now, we are live. We're probably not going to get to cover this video. Type 1 if you're happy listening to this conversation and enjoying it. Type 2 if you'd prefer we just moved on to covering a response to Sabine. 1 for enjoying the current conversation. 2, move on to Sabine immediately, can't stand it. Thank you very much.
I don't know what
but Chocolate, that means he's aware of it. Yet he didn't include that part in his video.
Yeah. I get that.
So
I would
that's
not
not
expect
honest.
him to. I'm not trying to say he's the man and stuff, but I wouldn't expect him to give that up.
When
Well,
they have
I
when they
wouldn't
have
expect a lawyer. Go on.
when
Let
they
me
have
say this part.
all right.
Just very quickly. I wouldn't expect the lawyer to give that up in their video. A dishonest person. But an honest person, I would. Go on, then.
Yeah, but a real liar wouldn't give it up to us either. He would still continue to lie.
And now for the most ham-handed segue ever. Speaking of liars, we're going to cover Sabine Hossenfelder.
A lot of mathematics and physics, as you have undoubtedly noticed. But what's the difference between the math that we use to describe nature and nature itself? Is there any difference? Or could it be that they're just the same thing? That everything is math?
No, definitely not.
Oh my God.
You can't start from such a faulty premise, can you?
Like, she literally started off with, what's the difference between something we use to describe nature and nature? And say, okay, are they the same thing? Lady, you got to stop with this craziness. That's nuts.
Okay, had a couple of super chats. So Retro Bill, thank you for the super chat. It says, move on, please. Proverbs 20:19, quote, he who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets, therefore do not associate with a gossip, end quote. Thank you again for the super chat, Retro Bill. Also, D Rose chanting from the super chat and from Discord. Video, yay! I did a little straw poll. I asked the chat if they wanted us to move on, and they pretty much majority were like, yeah, move on, please. We've had enough of talking about Matthew and whether or not he's a liar. So there we go. So I've got the ball rolling. And
He is a liar.
I was going to say, notice how fickle the panel are and how willing they were to just accept we were moving on. But Brian, no, bucking the trend. Fair enough.
That's what we'll talk about today.
Oh, I don't know if I answered this already. No, we're not. No, math is a description. It's like saying, are we made of Spanish? Or are we made of Italian? Or are we made of Mandarin? Are we made of math? No. Definitely not made of math.
It's their attempt to make math reality, Nathan.
Yeah. They need it to be, because everything that they conjure as being a physical reality is only born out of their assertions and assumptions in maths. So, math for you Americans. But nevertheless, we're covering Sabine. We've definitely responded to her. We've already answered the question. We've already pretty much could draw a full stop and an end to this video at this point. But we will continue. Nevertheless, there is a link to Sabine's video going by in the live stream chat. As always, please go and let Sabine know Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, as we have responded to your video. But at the very minimum, just let her know we sent you. Say something nice. Let her know that you think she's done great work. Maybe tell her you left a like. And then let her know Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Because in the spirit of YouTubing, I would hope that were Sabine to respond to our critique, she would put a link to my video. Really, that's all it's about. That's the main thing I want. But there we go. Please let her know Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me.
I noticed in the comments to my earlier video about complex numbers that many people said, oh, numbers are not real. But of course numbers are real.
Numbers are real.
Here's why. You probably think I am real. Why? Because the hypothesis...
Do we have a quick straw poll on that? No, I'm
Oh
joking.
my God.
No, you're real.
He's unreal, man.
You know, you could fall under physics, biology and such, but maths is a different genre, completely different genre.
But maybe
I'm wondering if Sabine could please hand me a bag of fives. That'd be great.
Go ahead, John.
well, she might be getting
Let
ready
me know
to
when she got that.
Hold on.
She may be getting ready to convolute the binary code that transmits the signal that we all communicate with being numbers.
Okay, see where she goes.
Is that I'm a human being standing in front of a green screen, trying to remember that the H in human isn't silent, explains your observations. And it explains your observations better than any other hypothesis. For example, that I'm computer...
Sorry, so there's her first mistake. So a hypothesis is not an explanation. because it would violate the law of non-contradiction if it was. So she's saying it's better than any other hypothesis. No, she's confusing validated systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis with her just so stories in mathematics. So the reason you can't take a hypothesis to be an explanation is because in a hypothesis you have something called a null, and it's the antithesis of your prediction. So if you assume that A is going to cause B, B being your naturally observed phenomena, and A being your guess at what will cause it, you also, alongside it in a hypothesis, have the supposition that A, the thing you think will cause the effect, won't cause the effect. That's if A, not B. And a hypothesis contains both. One is called the alternative, if A, then B. That's to say that your supposition proves true. You vary A and it does cause B. But it also has a null, if A, not B. So a full scientific hypothesis cannot be taken as an explanation because A can't both cause B and not cause B simultaneously. Whereas she's taking these words, of course she is, stealing valor from the scientific terminology and saying that one hypothesis is better than another when you're juxtaposing physicality with descriptions in a language. That's maths.
Generated, in which case I'd probably be better.
Doing here is trying to shove in false scientific method, I think. You're just reading what she said. She says, my hypothesis, I stand here as a human. And where her validation comes from, she said, look, it's the best hypothesis because it's the one that explains your observations better than any other hypothesis. So she's got multiple hypotheses that she's going to stack up against each other, and whichever one best explains her standing there, that's the one she accepts. That appears to be the methodology she's describing.
Right, so rather than taking multiple, quote, hypotheses as explanations, in the scientific method, what you would actually do is vary A. That's an experiment. So you vary A and see if it causes B, and if it does, you put a tick next to your alternative hypothesis. It's proven, it's validated. You did suppose correctly, you proved the cause of the effect. If you vary A and it doesn't cause B, again, that's an experiment, then you validated your null. You put a tick next to it. That's what you do when you discount hypotheses, because you're discounting either the alternative or the null, not a whole stack of just so stories that you take to be explanations and say whichever the best just so story fits will be the one I take. No, you discount either the alternative or the null because you have to, because both can't be true. Can't cause A can't cause B and not cause B at the same time. And when you vary A, it's either going to cause B or not cause B. And when it doesn't cause B, you put a tick next to the null. And when it does cause B, you put a tick next to the alternative. That's the discounting of hypothesis, if you want to phrase it in that way. Again, she's got a loose idea. It almost makes me feel like she's stealing valor in such a way that makes it seem like she couldn't not know what the scientific method was, to steal it in such a way that's so closely paralleled.
But she's not described any phenomenon. She specifically said that I am standing in front of a green screen. That's not a phenomenon.
Right. Yeah, good point. I didn't catch that. Not even got a dependent variable to put a hypothesis to, is John's point.
Looking, or that I'm a hallucination, in which case your subconsciousness...
So it's just observation then, right? So she's mistaken the first step of the scientific method. So it's not observation. It's observation of natural phenomena. Well caught, John. Are you standing there? Or are you just a hallucination? So therefore she's trying to introduce the idea that maybe couldn't be there. Therefore, the fact that she is a phenomena. We'll see if she goes there, potentially.
Speaks German, und das macht irgendwie keinen Sinn, oder? We use the same notion of reality in physics.
What? No, physics would be the study of the physical, and that's phenomena-based. You've described concrete nouns. That's definitely not something that would put through the physics of the method of science.
That something is real because it's a good explanation for our
Something being real, what, you explain something as a concrete noun, that's just a description of something.
observations. I'm not trying to tell you...
Descriptions aren't explanations. There's our problem. Right, let's summarize this whole video. There you go, Sabine. Summarised it for you. Flat Earther managed it. Didn't take long. 1 minute 18 at your video. Descriptions and explanations are different. Yeah? If you're going to describe how a light twinkles in the sky, that's fascinating. You can describe it all day long. But if you're going to explain why it happens, that would be to ascertain the cause of its effect. The effect being it twinkling, and if you can vary A to cause that twinkling, you've established through systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis what the cause of the effect is. Now, descriptions, on the other hand, they're not explanations. Yeah? Explaining why something happens is to explain the cause of it. You're just giving just so stories. Those are your versions of descriptions.
Tell you that this is the right way to define reality. It's just, for all I can tell, how we use the word. We can't actually see elementary particles like the Higgs boson with our own eyes.
Isn't the Higgs boson something that they conjured and then decided to ascribe to something that they saw in screens after doing particle collisions? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, it's squiggly lines.
Yeah. It's dots and lines.
We say they are real because certain mathematical structures that we have come up with describe our observations. Same thing with gravitational waves or black holes or the particle spin.
So basically listing off all the... She rattled them off in quick... Was that someone trying to get in? Go ahead.
I was just saying, like, quickly slipping, just like, calmly explaining very elaborately. Oh, quickly, let's ram these through. Quickly. Hopefully they won't notice.
They're all conjurings derived from mathematical assumptions that have no physicality whatsoever. Yeah, shocking, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's her job, though, basically. This is what she does.
And numbers are just like that.
Yeah, John.
She's trying to tie all of this back to mathematics or reality. So that's why she's going down this route.
Is she working on my bag of fives? I'm going to need that.
Yeah, she's got it in her back pocket, man.
She's busy picking out the threes chocolate at the moment.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you,
Of course,
Sabine.
we don't see numbers as objects walking around, but as attributes of objects, like the spin that is a property of certain particles, not a thing in and by itself. If you see 3 apples, 3
Did she say the spin in certain particles?
Yeah, she did.
Is that not also something that's a convention we've derived to just describe things that doesn't actually occur?
Yeah, it is. Doesn't no one saw? It's just a way of describing it. That's not a real phenomenon.
Well, hold on. It wouldn't be phenomenon. It'd just be, something you would measure. Spin would be an aspect of the physical world that you could measure.
It would be maths. It would be maths, would it not?
I think she's talking about the rotation of the electron in its orbitals, how you have opposing spin.
That's what I thought
That's
she
a
meant.
mathematical construct, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to address it, Adam, for that very reason, because it was you that was the first to point this out to me. But yeah, she's describing again something that's come from a convention that doesn't actually exist in physical terms beyond the description for us to understand how something is when you describe it. But that convention has no real... You can't back engineer it into physical reality, can you, Adam?
No, it's just a mathematical way of describing the movement position of the electrons, really. But it's exactly what she's saying, to be fair. You're not explaining what's going off. You're using maths in the best way you possibly can to describe what you observe in this case. Now, you may be able to make predictions from that may or may not be true. But what you don't get is an explanation from the maths at all.
Describes what you see, therefore it's real. Again, if that's a notion of reality you don't want to use, that's totally okay. But then I challenge you to come up with a different notion that is consistent and agrees with how most people actually use the word.
So what she's doing here is she's taking the notion that if you have got something in physical reality and you can describe it in mathematics, therefore that's reasonable for something that's physically real. And I would agree. The problem comes when you conjure something that has no physical reality and still has mathematics. That's where the problem comes in. Not when you've got 3 apples and you say that it's a number 3 and there really is 3 of them. Yeah, fine, but you're starting from the premise of apples that's real.
Excuse me.
He's working
Excuse me, Nathan.
He's got. If I've got 3 apples,
am I late?
And I add 3 apples, then how do apples grow? Because that's the crux of what she's doing here.
Right.
You're not reifying the number.
She also flipped the burden.
Yeah. There's no
that's what I was going to say.
Well, why don't you say it then, D Rose? Hold on.
Am I late? Am I late asking this? Because I did walk away from my phone. Or am I late bringing this point up? Is she not exposing the point we make about the blue green screen with the imagery that she just showed, trying to differentiate whether she's there or not, and how the maths prove she's there or whatever she's doing? I don't know what she's doing, but isn't she kind of exposing them that this is exactly what we say they do in NASA about the ISS and things like that?
Well, yes.
I mean, not to go off track, but
yeah, because but for the fact that she wasn't using a green screen, she wouldn't be making that point. But yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, yeah, I was going to say.
She's also flipped the burden. Oh, sorry.
That was what I was going to say. But John said it. I was waiting for Adam to finish. I was going to come in and say it. John said it, and that I just reiterated. Yeah, that's what she did. She's flipping the burden of proof. Well, why don't you prove me wrong as opposed to her prove her claim? You know?
But she's done that. Well, yes, that's true, but she's done it with something that I agreed with in the first instance, which is to say that you can ascribe a description in mathematics to something that's physical. So she's offered it up where you would be a fool to oppose her.
Doesn't change that it's a flip.
But then she applied it to something that does.
Yeah.
Right. Then she applied it to something that doesn't exist, and if you can't give a better explanation for something that doesn't exist, it's somehow on you.
Gotcha.
Interestingly enough, not all numbers are real. The example I just gave was for integers. But if you look at all numbers with infinitely many digits after the decimal point, we don't actually need all those digits to describe observations, because we cannot measure anything with infinite accuracy.
Okay, I would agree. So what?
Oh, no, because that math is only as good as the accuracy it describes reality. It's where it's useful, if you can get it to describe it. So she's now saying the opposite. You don't need accuracy for maths to describe reality.
I see.
In reality, we only ever need a finite number of digits. Now, all these numbers with infinitely many digits are called the real numbers, which means, odd as it may sound, we don't know whether the real numbers are real. But of course, physics is more difficult than just...
What? Physics?
It's funny that she said that, because I remember thinking that a while ago, hearing about real numbers, and then hearing that the description of real numbers are numbers that we don't actually think are real, but we call them real numbers. These people are nuts.
Yeah, but this is a weakness in an argument, isn't it? It's a concession. And we're going to have to make it a real number, because otherwise it's not real. So when you've got something that just goes on, like pi, that's not a real number, is it? It just goes on forever, and it's not quantifiable.
Shout out to Rob Keane, who says, still here, member for 38 months. Thanks for the super chat.
Again, I'm not sure the point she's making, where she's
trying to make numbers real, and that means that maths is then reality.
Exactly, yes. Brian. She's trying to make math reality.
Shout out to Shatner's Bassoon, who says, still here too, member for 24 months. Thanks for the super chats.
I'm wondering if this is a video that she had to make, because remember, she started the video with, I've got a...
Chocolate.
How many of those comments? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear
you. Break it up? Sorry. You guys hear me or no?
Yeah, we hear you now. We hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sitting here curious, like, So she started it off with a lot of people in my comments are saying that numbers aren't real. So I'm just speculating, like, are these people like on her, like heliocentrists, her fans that are trying to correct her and tell her that numbers aren't real, which was the purpose of her having to make this video, as she stated when she started. It's just a question I'm asking. I'm not really trying to make any big point, but it's just curious to me that she's got, like, she addresses it. Like, there's a lot of people telling me that numbers aren't real. Here I am to address that.
Shout out to JMails24, member for 34 months, says, I'll be here for at least the next 4 hours or so. Thank you for the super chat.
Can I ask John a question? John, do you think she's trying to conflate here real numbers with reality?
Yes.
Yes. Well, see, that's the thing. Like when they talk about the high energy short distance problems of their model, right? There's the world that exists inside their mind, the delusional world of heliocentrism and mathematics, and then there's what they experience. And she's trying to convolute the two.
There's just this arrogance in a lot of these quote unquote scientific community people, right? Because there's this arrogance of, well, how dare you, reality, not conform to my theory, or how I think the world should act according to my math. Like, how dare you, reality? No, you will conform. It's crazy to me. It's like a bit of arrogance that I don't like.
Well, they're
annoying.
acting like a guild, right? They're using this science community like a guild format, right? Where peers and numbers matter instead of, are you applying the method? And so the dynamics of how that works is different. It's like a little group, a little clique, and they have to defend it. Its honor, the honor of science.
But Owen, why would they have to make math reality?
Numbers. For all we currently know, everything in the universe is made of 25 particles held together by 4 fundamental forces. Gravity, the
No, it's no force of gravity.
electromagnetic force,
Even
and the
her own videos, she has a video that she made before this video, if I'm correct, and it states that gravity is not a force. She states that publicly in her video. The whole video is about how it's not a force.
strong and weak nuclear force. Those particles and their forces can be mathematically described by Einstein's theory of general relativity and quantum field theory.
Wrong.
Okay. Gravity is, isn't what they claim to be a force of gravity. That's not part of the molecular model when it comes to forces. Sure, it's not. Am I mixing something up there? I'm pretty sure that's not part of it.
No, you're not missing anything. Shout out to Retro Bill. Yeah. Sabine, the sensitive artist, using paint by numbers to render the night sky. ... Thanks for the super chat, Retro Bill.
Nice.
Theories which have been remarkably successful in explaining what we observe.
Quantum field theory. Is that a bastardization of quantum mechanics, or is that just quantum mechanics?
Didn't we talk about that? Was it just 2 days ago? We talked about that.
Yes.
John and everything.
Yeah, it's when quantum mechanics destroys Newtonian and Einsteinian, and then they try to merge the three into some hybrid. Is what
I see. It was. If I remember correctly from our discussion about this earlier, because we discussed this very subject with John QE among us like a few days ago, and it was indeed like the hijacking of a advanced concept, quantum mechanics, and to use it as a shelter for these outdated concepts so they could ride along and survive into the new age. That's really what it was there for.
Like a crutch.
Yeah.
So that they can,
or a shelter.
Hang on to something based in reality, and then throw all this other nonsense into it to therefore confuse people, and everyone thinks that this whole thing is an amalgamation of real shit when it's not.
Right. When she says that they've been very successful, what she actually realistically means is the quantum aspect that I'm peddling the rest of the crap off the back of has been very successful in giving us computers and such like. But this crap is just being strapped onto that one word, and general relativity in reality has offered us absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
For what?
quantum gravity is the attempt to amalgamate what the most unproven claim in the history of what they can call science, which is gravity, with the most proven field in what they call science, which is quantum mechanics. So it's an attempt to amalgamate.
And they flip it. And they flip it. They'll go where gravity is the most proven. That's a standard. Oh, gravity.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The science is concerned, I'd say that's it. But people often ask me things like, what is space-time? What is a particle? And I don't know what to do with questions like this.
Really? What is space-time? Okay. It's the conceptual medium developed by Einstein and labelled in the geometry of pseudo-Riemannian force space. That's length, breadth, depth, and time. So space-time is what is claimed to be bending when you describe gravity in an Einsteinian fourth dimension. So space-time is what would be bent to give you gravity in a mathematical conception. Pseudo in nature. There you go. That wasn't so hard. Anybody want to struggle with what's a particle?
I just wanted to say they did it again. They keep doing this. It's just like Neil deGrasse Tyson's like, oh, what is this fundamental thing? We don't know.
Same thing.
So they blabber on and on and on about how it all connects. But if you would, they literally admit, if you would ask me this, I don't know. Like,
if I was to ask Adam, if I was to say particle could also be simultaneously described as a non-divisible chunk, aka quanta, would that be accurate?
No.
Okay.
It is, because you can have gas particles, can't you? And so it's got various uses. I'm assuming she's talking on the atomic level, but that would be an atom to go to a singular unit, and then so I'm not sure where she'd be using it in terms of it's going to have implications in different fields.
Context is important when you're talking about particles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a particle is not just descriptive. I mean, descriptive, it's a way of describing the tiny that we can't see.
No, that's fine. What we're saying is at this stage we've got not enough context to qualify the question in regards to particle. That's fine.
Space-time is a mathematical structure that we use in our theories.
There you go. Someone trim that out.
Thank you, lady.
Thanks. That's brilliant. As opposed to physically interactable, as opposed to physically influential, as opposed to developing a non-force force that you can think of as a force that's the bending of this concept in mathematics. Let me just read out what she said verbatim. Space-time is a mathematical structure. All right, you can't stand on mathematical structures. They don't influence your day. You can't travel through them. You can't bend them. You can't dilate them. Mathematical structures have no physicality. You use them in your theories. That sounds like it's stealing the valor from physics now, doesn't it? Yeah, this mathematical nonsense, it has no bearing on physics.
This mathematical...
I want to say, all of maths, and she would have to agree to this, is descriptive. It's, as commonly known as, it's a descriptive language. Now, language, any form of language, is not physical. It's a way of it's a way of transferring information. So it's not physical. It would be supernatural at that point. If
You've got to remember what she's trying to describe, Brian. She's trying to describe why things fall to the ground if they're heavier and more dense than air. And the mathematical construct she's using is a ball that we're on and 4D space-time. This is why nothing works. Because, as she said, you use maths to describe something you observe. She's never observed this ball. It's all based on a faulty premise, you say. So the description is bunkum.
Yeah, exactly. Because the problem is that she doesn't. The problem is that she's trying to amalgamate maths with physical reality, but you can describe things that you've never seen mathematically. So you can't ever marry maths with physical reality. Besides the fact that there's only a description, because you can describe stuff mathematically that you've never seen, like Mordor, or a place, whatever, Aslan, from the Witch and the Wardrobe, or whatever, the Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe. You can describe characters, you can describe places mathematically that you've never seen and will never.
Well,
so how can you
just because I like
reality?
it, just the better comparison, because it parallels nicely, is if I give you the mathematics of the interdimensional travel that is wardrobe based. Obviously, you're going to travel through the wardrobe to get to Narnia. Well, there's quite some very, very complicated, I think it's 8th dimensional. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, Arwin. It is 8th dimensional mathematics of the wardrobe, is it not? Well, that's kind of complicated, and it only exists as a mathematical structure. But, it very accurately, mathematically describes the 8th dimensional travel through wardrobes. That's what it is.
Why did you drag me into that?
The structure is defined by its properties. Space-time is a differentiable manifold with Lorentzian signature, it has a distance measure, it has curvature, and so on.
What, things that exist in physicality? No, it doesn't have any of those things. They're described in mathematics as being curving through the 4th dimension. Yeah, it's the time dimension. You don't have a time dimension. So yeah, you can have these descriptions in maths like I can have a 7th dimensional description of wardrobe travel. It doesn't mean anything in physical terms.
It's a math thing.
Yeah, you're damn right it is.
We call it
mathematical construct. It's a mathematical construct of imagination with absolutely no experimental validation. Before the story begins, you need a foundation, curvature of the earth. That's the conversation.
Because it correctly describes our observations. It's a similar story for the particles. A particle is a vector.
That's a validation. We call it real because it correctly describes our observations. It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't, and that's what they try to do, is take explanation. Like, as Brian said, I could take the light of Mordor and describe it mathematically. It doesn't mean I have any idea what's making that light. I've just described how it moves mathematically.
Right. It's just, do our patterns match what we see? That's it.
A Hilbert space that transforms under certain irreducible representations of the gauge groups. That's the best answer we have to the question what a particle is. Again, we call those particles real because they correctly describe what we observe.
No one this time? Okay.
Isn't this a funny juxtaposition to the guy that we listened to? What was his name? Johnny something, who went through his whole video and at the end said, well, all of the knowledge of everything that we have, we've never seen.
Johnny Harris.
Yeah. Johnny Harris.
Yeah. What an idiot.
So when physicists say that space-time is real or the Higgs boson is real, they mean that a certain mathematical structure correctly describes observations.
No, because in the case of space-time, what's being observed? You're not observing the 4th dimension described in Einstein's pseudo for space. You're not describing anything. You're just describing it in maths.
Yeah, I had to look
this is a high level of 3-card Monty right here. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
It's all right. When she was going to particle, we said we're not sure where she's going to qualify it, and then she's come up with Hilbert space. I'd never heard of this, so I just had to look it up. In mathematics, Hilbert spaces allow generalizing the methods of linear algebra and calculus from Euclidean vector spaces to spaces that may be infinite dimensional. Hilbert spaces arise naturally and frequently in mathematics and physics, typically as function spaces. So it's just another way of describing something. So the term particle will have a meaning in this mathematical construct, but she's not really talking about any of the things we was about to differentiate as particles. But she's making that real. Maybe that's because you can describe a particle in this Hilbert space, an atomic particle. But again, the particle's real. The description in math isn't real.
But many people seem to find this unsatisfactory. Now, that may partly be because they're looking for a simple answer and there just isn't one. But I think there's another reason. It's that they intuitively think there must be something more to space, time, and matter, something that distinguishes the math from the physics.
There isn't any physics. What physics have you given us so far to distinguish it from the math when you've only given us math so far? This is because this is where she introduces the physics.
Something that makes the math real. Or
yeah, there you go. Called it. So I said, where? Will you distinguish it or will you introduce it? Something that makes the math real. So you're going to turn the math into the physics, as opposed to distinguish it from the things you've described with the physical reality that hasn't been in any way appearing in your descriptions thus far. What the hell?
Or as Stephen Hawking
On
put
screen,
it,
Nathan, she's got in big letters, math does not equal reality. Is that the disclaimer?
Well, if you got to make the math real, that means it wasn't real first.
Well, I don't know. On screen,
Adam.
next to it, she's got math, not these subtitles. Math does not equal reality, which I agree with.
Hey, Adam, I got a question for you.
Yeah. Next to it.
Hold up.
I got a question.
I got a question, Adam. Go ahead.
I got a question, Adam, and this is for anybody who wants to chime in. And remember, I'm still learning with you guys. I'm learning from you guys. These names, Euclidean and the other name that Adam said, when he was basing on what she was talking about, the two principles of the different time spaces, Euclidean and something else. I don't know what the word was, but are these named after individual people who come up with these? Almost like Alzheimer's was named after a guy named Alzheimer. You know what I'm saying? Are these concepts named
Euclid.
after people?
Yes. Euclid.
David.
Okay,
Hilbert.
thank you. Okay. So what I'm saying, David Obert and whoever, Anthony Euclidean, whatever. These guys that come up with this stuff? That's what I was talking about before in the past. When you remember saying, who made these people, Einstein, all of who made them the demigods to make this true? Just because it came from their mind and it was an assumption based on mathematics, but doesn't have anything to equate to reality. That's what I don't understand. I don't get it. They did.
Well, no, the
It
university.
was
How
like
dare
they
you
were
talk
the
about our
smart
blessed
people at the
Einstein
time.
like that?
The universities that do.
Peace be upon him.
Is that what you're asking? Who props them up and says this person's right? Well, universities.
Okay.
People who need them.
Yeah, indeed.
They needed Einstein.
That was the next thing I was going to come to, actually, Brian. Exactly. You pick it out of a pot of things that, you could potentially utilize. So Einstein's maths prove useful for taking away the notion of mass attracting mass and putting the word gravity into a different dimension. That's quite useful. Yeah, we'll put that into the mainstream education system at a higher education level. And there we go. Now we've got an Einsteinian fourth dimension that's gravity, and we'll just leave the Newtonian in for the kiddies. And that'll solve the problem. Why? Well, because it's there and that's what they've used. It doesn't mean it's the best. It just means that he's what they've got. Einstein, that is.
So then why
Why were you,
Vote against them?
I don't know, Neil.
Neil, you put yourself back on mute in the middle of what you're saying. He's done it again.
Definitely, Neil. I mean, it's a pertinent point you're making. Okie dokie then.
They needed Einstein. Let me just fill in this. They needed Einstein because what they were working with wasn't going to keep the model alive. So when Einstein came along, they jumped on what he was putting forth. Whether it worked or not, all that mattered is that it kept the ball literally rolling, right? That's what they needed. But in 1969, they needed Newton again, or what they claimed to be Newton.
get
right?
the ball rolling. Okay,
Anyway, I'm going to just do a quick shout out to Shatner's Bassoon, who says, "Is Sabine a liar or a psychopath? 4 more hours." With that, though, I am actually going to say, if you're watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, super chat or otherwise, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to today's Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you for smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, expressing your longevity as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Satellite. I can't find.
You're not the only one.
Reverse. You had it for a second.
Am I
Never mind.
Am I under the satellite now?
Wait, look up. Do you see it?
Right, I'm going to get myself a drink and stuff.
Someone called 911. Matthew's pants are on fire.
Perhaps I'm going to sort myself with the drink and stuff. So talk about yourselves, and then we'll cover a bit more Sabine if you're up for it.
Yeah. 4 more hours.
Could you get me a bag of 5s too, Nathan? Or 4s? I'll take 4.
Say something, Neil.
I think he's trying to do just that. It's not working though.
Check. Mic check.
Yeah, we
hear you now.
Too.
Or we could.
I give.
You're roboting terrible, Neil. This is inaudible.
Well, I think we all came to the conclusion anyway earlier to just draw a line under what we were talking about for several days, that refracted curvature is a liar.
But I went to look at the screen. She literally did have said math equal sign with a cross through it, reality. So math isn't reality. Maybe you should go tell that Glober, what was his name, Reds or something, that math isn't reality. But the one that screamed math is reality. Oh, really? Might want to go talk to Sabine there.
That non-expressional stare she has is just eerie.
She's eerie.
It's just eerie. There's one thing I wanted to say about these philosophers back then, and I say it on channels all the time. It's like there were two groups of people. There were philosophers, and then there were the commons, right? The commons kept asking the philosophers questions about, like, what this place looks like. What do you know, right? And it got to the point where the philosopher came up with a model, did some math on the model that they made up, and said, here, stop asking questions. And eventually it got through the centuries saying, oh, well, this guy said it was this, and this guy said it was this. But nobody back then actually could do that kind of research for themselves because they didn't know. And really,
just having
neither
an
did
answer
the
is good enough.
philosophers.
Sorry, buddy.
And then the other thing I want to talk about real quick was everybody know what CERN is? Hadron Collider. Okay. So I visited there, and I got actually escorted out of one of the buildings because I started talking and asking questions too much. And one of the questions I was asking was, how are they accelerating these particles at the speed of light? Well, then, from what I know about human plasma is basically an electromagnetic substance that carries proteins and nutrients and electrons and through your body at the speed of light. So what they're doing at CERN is they're using human plasma to accelerate certain atoms, certain molecules past the speed of light and creating an explosion. They found that Higgs boson was essentially a part of consciousness by using plasma. And they can't do any more with it because they need it to accelerate faster to create a bigger explosion. Because once they create that explosion, that energy only stays around for a couple like milliseconds, essentially, right? So then I concluded that this is what all these plasma donation places are for. So people go
You're
and
blowing my
donate
mind
their
right
plasma,
now,
they
dude.
ship it off to CERN.
So
Where
it's
the
not
hell
for
did you
the
get this information? This is nonsense.
Hold on. What was the
This is
explanation though for them to escort you out of the building for just asking? That doesn't sound like that
Well,
unreasonable
from
of a
what
statement to make.
I assumed they were doing, is using human plasma, colliding, making a consciousness, like an actual consciousness energy, and then taking like what they do with AI and how they, have all these cephalographs and magnets in your phones that basically read your vitals, read your frequency, and it becomes a part of you, right? So then they relay all the information that they have out of these phones, out of this system, like basically human frequency. And what I think they're trying to do is they're trying to create this consciousness and then upload all the bullshit from why they need your electromagnetic frequencies, your vitals, your facial expressions, your thoughts, your energy, everything you put into the device, right?
So did
With
you share
intent to
this
create
information with
some.
them? Hold on, buddy. Did you share this information with them? Is that I'm trying to? But the curious part for me is not exactly what they're doing. Is why they escorted you out of the building for asking questions. That's what I want to know.
Because what my assumption is, what I'm trying to get to.
But what
Okay,
did
I'm
you
sorry.
exactly say to them that said, "Okay, buddy, you're out of here"? That's what I'm thinking he wants to know.
You're trying to create the devil.
No, I think I've never heard of this information before. In fact, I was thinking a few minutes ago, not to challenge you, but where did you get this information from?
That's what he told them, and that's why they kicked him out. Is like what
I know that, but you, the person who's talking about,
If you know what plasma is,
somewhat, yes, I do.
and you know what
He made it up.
its tendencies are. It carries electromagnetic
That's
properties.
fine, but where did you get? Is this something you came up with on your own, or is this
No,
something
this is stuff I used to study in school.
Well, I know a little bit about plasma, so I was following along with you.
You have a
So
major
you're
problem.
talking about.
Hang on. You have a major problem in everything you're saying. You're bringing in the speed of light. That doesn't exist. There is no speed of light measurement. It's a two-way calculated average.
I was
So there's no
waiting
such
for that.
thing as something
Right.
moving at the speed
Let's
of light,
just say they're
or moving
accelerating it
faster or
really
slower.
fast then.
Hang on.
What you?
There's no such thing. Hang on. There's no such thing as something moving at the speed of light or faster or slower than the speed of light, because nobody knows the speed of light or if it even has a speed.
Okay, then I won't use speed of light. We'll just say they're accelerating particles super fast. Is that better?
Well,
to create an explosion.
That's more correct.
Yeah, but now your train of thought that you laid out earlier doesn't make any sense anymore, because it was important.
No, it does.
That there
It
was
still does,
limited
because
speed
I just
of
won't
light
use
for
that
them
term.
to progress. Dude, you obviously
They need
made
to
up
accelerate
this
them
idea
faster.
yourself. That's obvious.
No. So okay. So forget
Oh,
the speed of
no?
light. Let's
Oh,
just
then
say
who
they've
told
reached
you
a
this
certain
then?
speed.
Who told you this? Who
This
told you this
way.
idea of particle acceleration and using human plasma? Where did you get that specifically? Not
The
that it
fact
could
that
be done, that's what
it's
they're
called,
doing.
they accelerate electrons on what's called plasma wake fields.
What does that have to do with human plasma?
Where that's where you get an abundant sorts of plasma. Yes.
So,
and so the
they
people that
use
I was talking
plasma.
to
You know that
started
there's a
getting very
difference
offended.
between plasma in physics, right? The material state of plasma and biological plasma. That's very different. Yeah. So this all just sounds completely nonsensical. And it sounds like you made it up.
Plasma
You're just
carries your
you're just
human
inferring, oh, they're
plasma.
using human plasma, but you're not sourcing that. You're just stating it like it's a fact. How do you know about that? How do you know that's
based on
fact?
them removing me from the facility, it seems that I was onto something.
Or they
No.
just thought you were talking
So that
nonsense.
means
and
you
wanted
made it
to-
up yourself, and you thought that them
Or they thought you was a
escorting you
nut-
from the building was proof that it was real, even though you literally made it up yourself. So you don't have a lead.
I did not
Nobody
make
told
this
you
up
that that is what
myself.
they were doing.
Hold on, just one
It
second.
might have
guys.
just thought you were.
Hello.
They,
I can hear
Hello?
that. Is it Jenny? I assume because it's the only female name I can see. I could just hear you from the kitchen. You clearly want to make an objection, but you've tried about 4 times. So I've come back in to say, did you want to just make your own?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm all for speculation, but you just got to preface it as such. So that's why I was asking you where you got this information. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. It's not a matter of that. It's like, where'd you get this from, is all. But I think what we were talking about a few minutes ago actually was, way back, these philosophers made up these conceptual idea models, and then they've been spending centuries trying to make the math work. So,
Right.
I mean, why would anyone take a measurement, a perceived measurement of the radius, and then say, "Hey, everybody, it's a ball from 2 sticks or a well from
Because you
thousands of
made
years
the
To
ago?"
hide them
assumption
from the
first.
truth.
They didn't
What?
do that. They didn't do that, Jenny. Nobody did that.
What?
That's the point. That never happened. Nobody made a measurement of a globe out radius. That never happened.
Exactly,
They made a
because
measurement.
conceptual idea is what it came from, so it's ridiculous on its face.
And there's no
Yeah, just say
primary
what's
source
up. What's up,
documents to
Jenny? It's
even
good to
prove
hear
it
your voice.
occurred.
Shout out to hemophiliacs that need plasma out there.
Hey, the mainstream narrative is that
nothing
the
alike.
plasma is formed due to the heat that is created in the kaleidoscope.
In the
Yeah,
kaleidoscope.
over-energized particles, right? And their interactions. Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about human blood?
He was assuming it was human blood, but I just did a bit of reading, and it says that it's plasma formed from the generation of heat.
And what do humans generate? Heat.
Yes, but
Oh,
what they're saying is that
so-
it's the heat generated
so not-
when they're spinning
so
the
not
particles,
human generate
not
heat
that we put, not that they're putting human plasma into it.
They're using the electromagnetic. This is what I would assume, because from what I've learned, that they're using the electromagnetic properties of human plasma to accelerate particles fast, to make those explosions.
Makes no
And
sense
they're
whatsoever. Where did you learn that? Like, that statement is just fundamentally illogical. Where did you learn that? Yeah, learning means you got it from
what? That
somewhere.
plasma
Sounds
carries
like you made it up.
electromagnetic properties. Where that
It just
plasma?
sounds like you made it up, dude.
So I made up that plasma has electromagnetic properties.
No,
Which
but it
plasma?
has nothing
Okay.
to do with human. This is not plasma created from humans. Yeah, there's no
So you
people
don't believe
stuck
that
to that
humans have
to the
electromagnetic
cyclotron.
Hang on. Let me just sort something out here. When they are creating, right, hydrogen fusion, they can't contain the plasma that they create because it's too hot. So because plasma, this is hydrogen plasma, once they heat the hydrogen gas to the point where it becomes plasma, they then contain it with a toroidal field because plasma has electromagnetic properties, right? Once it becomes plasma, right? Away from the gas state, right? How did you get from that to blood, human blood? Are you saying human blood has electromagnetic properties and can be controlled via electromagnetism?
No.
Not you, Arwen. Not you, Arwen. I'm not
No, but I
saying you.
get what he said. He already explained this. What he meant is that humans create plasma as a side effect. That's basically what he's suggesting. It didn't have anything to do with human blood. That was just a mistake, right? But it makes no sense to say it's human
I thought that he
energy.
said that the plasma.
I don't know because you're answering for him.
No, he literally answered this just a minute ago.
Well,
No,
I'd like
I
him
thought
to,
his original
Can
statement.
we let him though?
Yeah, I need him to. I don't need you telling me, Arwen. I need the man that's saying it to validate or invalidate that what he's saying.
I've learned that human plasma carries electromagnetic properties. We all agree. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but you're saying that that's what you learned. Yeah.
So you don't believe that a human carries electromagnetic
Not belief.
properties?
I said I don't know if it's true. I said I don't know if it's true. I'm saying that's what you said you learned. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm saying I don't know. I've never heard of that. But I have never looked into
an
human
aura,
blood plasma.
An aura, your energy. You don't believe in any of that.
Yeah, it's not about belief. It's like I said, I don't know. You keep on strawmanning me because you're trying to force in some idea you have into reality, but you haven't validated any of these things. And we're trying to find out whether what you think is happening is actually happening. That's all. I'm not saying I believe or disbelieve. I'm saying what I know or don't know.
I studied this at the University of Michigan.
Fine. But that doesn't mean
Back
I know.
in
I'm pretty sure it's the
2009.
same university that teaches gravity too, more than likely.
No, I don't teach. No,
they don't teach gravity.
So was your conclusion from that they were using human plasma?
They were using human plasma to accelerate particles fast, because when you either compress or collide plasma, it creates an electromagnetic field, and that can be amplified that directly correlates to how fast you're doing it, or how hard or how much pressure you're putting into it.
Can I just step in for a second? I'm really sorry, just to bring some clarity. I stepped away. I can't believe the conversation's descended this far, but there we go. That's the way it goes sometimes when you step away. Okay, so there's plasma that's a fluid constituent part of blood, and there's a state of matter. They're different things.
Your body runs on electricity, right?
But you're conflating two different things. One is a liquid and is a description of something in blood, that's plasma.
Right.
And one is a state of matter, like above gas, plasma. These two things are different.
And you can extract plasma from blood.
Well, possibly you might be able to extract something and then give it a phase change and then give it another phase change and get it to be a gas and then get it to be a plasma. That quite possibly could be the case, but you wouldn't necessarily take the liquid constituent part just because it's called plasma and go, I'm going to get this to be plasma.
Okay, I see where the confusion is. I see where the confusion is. You're assuming that I'm just putting plasma into the Hadron Collider and accelerating particles.
No, the collider itself is a particle accelerator.
Right. So there is a state change that they use the electromagnetic properties of plasma to accelerate electrons and particles through the accelerator. That's why they have giant supermagnets. because plasma displays electromagnetic properties.
Yeah, plasma does. The state of matter does, but not.
Yes.
Not
and
the,
so
not
they
the,
alter
not
that.
water,
they alter
not
that and utilize it to accelerate particles.
Yeah, but you
This has
recognize
within a
that
nothing to do with
magnetic
humans.
nothing.
within
Hold on,
within a
everyone else
magnetic
except Adam.
system.
Can you just stop a second? Go ahead, Adam.
You recognize that. I agree with that on the plasma side as the state of matter, but you recognize the two are wholly different things when you're talking about basically the fluidy bit of blood, the plasma side of it. So the bits that's not the cells and red blood cells, white blood cells. So just the fluidy bit, the amniotic fluid, that the plasma, that's basically mostly water. And I'm not sure how you're making a link between that and what you described correctly with regards to the formation of plasma as a state of matter.
However, we have now figured out why you got kicked out.
Yeah.
Because I was assuming that using human plasma, the properties of human plasma to accelerate particles
Gotcha.
super
Stop.
fast
That's
and
the confusion.
making that collision.
Yeah, it's different plasma.
And
It's just a confusion on your part. It's all right. Everyone makes mistakes. It's the same bloody word.
But the curious part for me is why would somebody not? I mean, you're talking about CERN, right? This is where all these supposedly super scientists are at, right? Why wouldn't somebody want to just sit down and explain that to you just matter of factly, as opposed to going to the extent of kicking you out? That's for me is the curious part.
Everybody in the group that I was with started listening to me instead of the person talking to us.
Okay.
But are you still stating that?
But
Are you still
just real
stating?
quick, Bryce. But that even makes it a little bit worse because you would think, well, now you've got a group of people that are starting to go down this route of thought. So why wouldn't you then break out all the scientists, put a 5-alarm fire, right? Bring out scientists to explain to this group of people that you have here at CERN, where we're doing all this magical stuff like colliding particles, right? Why is that not the point when you would bring the guys out to explain this to the people? That's the only thing I'm kind of laughing at. But yeah,
oh, that'd be like a bit pretentious. It'd be like walking into a classroom, and interrupting the teacher's lecture, and then expecting him to tolerate answering all the questions you have so that he can get back to his lecture.
Can I just get back to my question?
That's the point of being able to ask questions, though. That's why I was asking questions.
Can I ask you a question? What do you think light travels through, just out of interest?
It can travel through, I feel, anything.
But if you were to give it a name?
Existence. I don't know. What name do you want?
I don't know. I'm just fishing for whether or not you're an ether believer.
I knew that's what you were doing.
I knew that's where he was going.
As far as what?
Oh, as far as what?
I don't know.
Do you believe in the luminiferous ether?
The luminous what?
The luminiferous ether. Is that something you believe in or ascribe to?
I've never even heard of luminiferous ether.
No. My hunch was wrong. It's all okay. Just ignore me.
Sorry, can I get back to my question, please? Because we're going off into tangents. I need this man. Are you still of the opinion, right, that you learned that the plasma from human blood has electromagnetic properties and they're using this in CERN? Is that still your opinion, or have you
I never said it was a fact. I'm just saying I was assuming.
Yeah, I'm asking you about plasma now. The plasma that you're talking about, right? Regardless of whether the point is, are you still claiming that the plasma from human blood has electromagnetic properties?
Yes.
And you learned this in university in the United States?
From experiment, yes.
Experiment. So, did you learn it, or did you learn this? Were you taught this by a professor or whatever at university?
No, this was an experiment conducted.
By you.
So what we did is we took plasma from blood and put it into different metals. And we compressed those different metals. Depending on the metal and depending on how much plasma was inside the metal and how much pressure you would compress it with, and then scanned it, the electromagnetic properties of the metal would increase.
What was the observed
depending on
phenomenon,
the
though?
pressure exerted.
Yeah, you ever get the feeling your chain's being pulled?
Yeah.
What the hell does this have to do with plasma in the
You get
cyclotron?
plasma and you squish it into a metal now.
Are you saying that
enough's enough?
Hang on, leave Adam.
Well, hold on. Maybe he's speculating that
No, you engage with the absolute moronicness of this, Arwin, then. Off you go, mate.
It's not
if you don't know,
science.
when
I
someone's
agree with you.
taking the piss out of you, all right? I've listened to 10 minutes. He's winding you up, mate. It's like an April Fool's joke. Listen to the crap.
That's
I'm
what I've
taking
been
plasma
trying
and I'm squishing it into a metal now, and I got a new metal that's got that I measured. What are you on about?
Well, I think that he's reasoning out because he did those tests, which very little to do with anything, really. It's just fooling around.
His original
He might.
statement.
Oh, come on.
Arwin, you're in his fantasy already. What test?
I'm trying to summarize what I think is a train of thinking.
Yeah, my question is and was the University of Michigan, which he claimed where the experiment was done.
Ask you a question.
No. Well, not a question. I'm gonna make a statement. I guarantee you that University of Michigan had a department or a curriculum where they taught fourth dimensional Einsteinian
who cares,
gravity.
though? Who
Nothing
cares,
to do with
Matt?
this. Don't aggravate
Nothing to
it.
do with it. Nobody cares. That's every university ever.
I think this
It's
is
That's what I'm saying.
I don't
That's what I'm saying.
really
That doesn't make it
understand
substantiated because it came from a university.
Hold on a second, D-Rose. Why is it that the chemist on the panel so dismissive of this? I mean, they could be using blood to accelerate
I've
particles.
never been to the
Adam.
blood plasma metal squishing department for electromagnetics. Have you?
Look, Adam, have you validated that it is not the case that gas plasma extracted from human plasma isn't the best kind of plasma there is? Have you validated that's not the case?
Yeah, well, this afternoon I think we have, haven't we? I mean,
I haven't invalidated that. It might be the case. For all I know, human
Dr.
plasma is the best plasma there is. And that's why they use it. You just don't know, Adam. You're being very dismissive.
You're right.
This equivocation must be true.
I've got to close mine.
I
apologize.
Sorry, I just dropped something in the mainstream on the main text chat on the mainstream view of this subject.
What subject?
This subject, has this suddenly been categorized as a subject matter?
Well, the subject of human blood being electromagnetic is just the mainstream view. I don't know. I just jumped on ChatGPT and asked it, and that was the answer it gave.
Oh, God, you're asking AI?
No, sometimes there's nothing wrong with AI.
I've been loving the AI.
Hold on. If you just want to do an advanced Google search, which is all AI really offers until you get into the nitty-gritty of something contentious, but as an advanced Google function, they're going to start adding it. When you start Google searching stuff, they'll say, this is probably better off ran through AI. And they'll just give you the AI answer. You probably won't even be realising it in about 5 years from now. Anyway.
But see,
I'm not saying it's the real answer. I'm just saying it's the main... Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm
No,
not
go
saying
ahead.
it's the
AJ, you're
correct...
on with the point, so you go ahead, AJ. Tell us what it actually said.
Look, I'm not saying it's the correct answer. I'm just sort of putting it up there as the current mainstream view of the subject we're discussing.
It's got nothing to do with what was being discussed. It's a description of blood, and that's it. It's got nothing to do with turning plasma into plasma, and it's got nothing to do with squishing metals into plasma to make them more electromagnetic. It's just a basic statement that blood contains various ions such as sodium, potassium, calcium chloride, which have positive and negative charges. Which is all perfectly acceptable biology. The electral property of blood have been studied with various contexts, not once did it say we studied it by squishing it into a metal and realised everything became more magnetic.
Yeah, it's two different.
The
it's a different
electromagnetic
category.
properties strengthened when we did this.
No,
This
what you
was
did
not a
then,
part of
Lotion Basket.
pushing plasma
Lotion
into
Basket,
metal.
can you hear me?
This was an
Can you hear me, dude?
experiment. Me and a couple
Lotion Basket,
buddies
can you hear me?
came up
Can you
with.
hear me?
An
Can
experiment.
you hear me? Lotion Basket, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Before your statement, what you did was you laughed.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I heard you laugh.
I'm
Why'd I
glad
laugh at what?
Before you
snickering
started your
like it's
statement, while we all highlighted the absurdity of what you've been doing, you know, Adam and I are the only two that actually cottoned on to what you're doing, and now we're having a joke amongst ourselves.
Speak for yourself.
But before you started
No,
that statement, I'm
it's
still
just
talking.
kind of
I'm still talking.
yeah.
Before you started that last statement, you launched into the statement with a laugh.
Because of a
We're
thought I
really
had
curious
that
about
when
why you would do
people
that.
find out something or they hear something that they don't know, they get defensive and offended, and then this is how all of this starts.
You're going to keep towing this line? Like, it's not absurd what you've done?
I'm merely explaining an experiment we
Is
did.
that a yes? Yes, wanker. Somebody kick him out. This guy's an asshole.
He's about to have flashbacks.
Hello?
I don't understand.
You know, you're damn right. You don't. Adam's already identified what you've done. I have twice pointed out that you've just misunderstood this.
I'm not trying to do
talking.
anything.
Still talking. Yep. It's been pointed out to you by several people that you've just misunderstood a word that's got two different meanings. One being a liquid-based substance in blood, the other being a state of matter. Third time I've pointed it out to you. But you're carrying on.
But that's not
now,
what
the
he's
point
saying.
is, after the absurdity was pointed out to you, you launched into this the rendition of it again to try and get us back onto this subject with a laugh.
Because of how people are getting so mad. It's weird to me. When I'm merely explaining an experiment me and a couple buddies did in school.
Wasn't an
And
experiment.
then when I went to Geneva and started talking, I was escorted for talking. And this is kind of how it's going now.
We heard. We
So
heard all this.
Kicked
Okay, we
out
heard
for
even
talking.
Sorry, we heard all this.
my question is even if blood or plasma does have electromagnetic properties, how do you then jump from that to the conclusion that that is human blood, human plasma that's being used at CERN rather than the heat generated from CERN itself?
Like I said, it was an assumption. I'm not saying I'm right. It was
No,
an
I didn't ask if
assumption.
you were right. I asked, how did you make that assumption? How did you actually get to that assumption that that was the plasma?
He didn't. He just made it up to come in there and take the piss.
I'm not trying to irritate anybody. I'm merely just explaining, or I don't know.
These are ingenuous questions, and I want to know who cited your experiment to be a validated empirical
There wasn't any
conclusion.
experiment. He didn't observe anything.
It never
Okay,
happened.
that's what I'm saying. I'm using his own statement to have him elaborate. What professor or what scientific committee said what you and your buddies did? Substantiated empirical conclusion.
I mean, to be honest, it sounds more like witchcraft, doesn't it? We took a load of blood, put it on metals, and made it more maggot. Was it which school you went to?
Or was it just that had an idea for an experiment?
Whose plasma did you get?
Verified? Oh my
The
God!
bloodlet each
You know what I
other
did?
during this,
The
and
straw.
then filtered the plasma off. This is just beyond ridiculous, guys. Don't entertain it anymore. It's a waste of time.
You can't even come up with the scientific thought that gave him the reasoning. Like they keep asking for 10 minutes. What is the scientific reasoning for you to make that assumption? Why did you make that conclusion in your head? Do you have any type of scientific backing?
Because of the electromagnetic properties of human plasma.
Can we just stop taking this guy seriously and move on? Because this is all nonsense.
We're going in circles.
Let me just put some clarity here, right? Human blood does have salts and stuff in it, right? the human brain does have an electric charge, measurable, right? So yes, there is electricity moving through the human body, and the moving electric charge will create a magnetic field. So there is a certain amount of electromagnetism to a human body.
Not really in blood plasma, though, Brian. Plasma is 91% water, right? The rest of it,
Yes, right.
I've just looked it up. Coagulants, mainly fibrinogen to a plasma proteins such as albumin and globulin. Yeah. That's about it. There's nothing ferric. So anything that would be considered magnetic, like the red blood cells with the iron in, they've already been removed. They're not part of plasma, are they? They're the red blood cells. You're not even dealing with that. No ferric material, nothing. But the whole point, this is just to demonstrate a complete lack of understanding here on both parts, both on plasma, and what plasma even is if it was going to have any ferric property. If after you've squished it into a metal. Remember what was said?
Oh, yeah, I remember. The point, just trying to clear up. That is the extent of the electromagnetic field within the human body. The brain and the salts and that run through the bloodstream, right, in the body. That's, there is a measurable electric charge from the brain, blah, blah, blah. But, right, plasma, right, as in plasma like hydrogen plasma, etc., that does have electromagnetic properties as well, but it's completely separate from blood plasma. I don't know how much salt is left in blood plasma, right, after they've extracted everything else. I don't know what's left in it. But I really don't know how someone could get from that point of having that plasma from blood to putting it with metals and seeing some differential and then going off to CERN and going in there and getting thrown out of there. That to me sounds like kind of a crazy thing to be doing without validating anything. And if you had actually something that could be validated, why would you not validate it prior to going there? It sounds like some load of rubbish.
Imagine turning up to CERN with a bag of plasma going, guys, I've got you some fresh plasma in your Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
That might make a mess.
I've been filtering my blood for a week to give you the purest plasma I could find.
Dr. Frankenstein.
You do realize that there's thousands and thousands of plasma donation places all over the world.
And you do realize you just...
And how did they push it into the metal? That's what I'm curious at. Like, did you put it into a pressure chamber or a hydraulic press or... Like, wow, amazing.
They're making Terminator.
Did you heat it up?
They probably used a hammer.
Look,
all
I'm explaining is an experiment we did. If the electromagnetic properties of the metal were only increasing, let me fucking finish. If the electromagnetic properties of the metal that we were smashing or compressing, if the only reason why the electromagnetic properties were increasing was because of the metal and not the plasma, that's fine.
Why is nobody calling him on the fact that he's calling in an experiment?
I know. Hang on 1 second. You said to Neil, let me fucking finish. Neil asked you a very pertinent question. You claimed experiment. Neil said it's not an experiment, which it isn't. You went and messed around with things, supposedly. Now, how did you do what you did? You said you compressed the plasma from blood into metals. What did you use to do that? What was your tools or implementation?
We used hydraulic presses. Or is that what you wanted to hear?
I want to hear
yes, we want to hear what you did. You claimed that you did something. What did you do?
Please. Howard, yeah. I'm asking the same question. You said you compressed the plasma from human blood. Hang on, I'm not finished asking the question. You said you compressed the plasma from human blood into different metals. What instruments or tools did you use to do this?
Hydraulic press.
Name them.
An electromagnet.
And an electromagnet. So you hydraulically press something and you held a magnet near it.
Hold up. You put an electromagnet on a metal and then tested afterwards whether or not its electromagnetic had increased.
Thank you.
Something to detect a little problem in your methodology, sir.
What's that?
If you don't know after what you just described and I just reacted to it, then
I have
you
another
lost.
question. What facility,
And
what
just
facility or
prove you
institution
just
did you retrieve the plasma?
He made it up himself, guys.
Yeah. What
I
you've got
just
to
want
do
to answer.
first, Darwin,
What
before you can
facility?
do all of that, is
What
you have to take all your equipment through the wardrobe so you've got the right temperature next to the lamp, because Mr. Timbers has just prepared everything just right, and that's how you get plasma to go into a metal.
And with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!